Hello, I'm Nick Haynes. Over the past 6 months, KCPT has been lifting up the hood, or perhaps more appropriately, raising the roof on housing. In January, there's an overflow crowd at the Plaza Library for our town hall on eviction.
We do not have to have this going on.
Living in an apartment that was infested by roaches and rats.
Landlords hate evictions. They're horrible.
It's a story about a failing system.
I've sat on the couch with somebody looking at their 72-inch Rent-A-Center.
This is actually turning not into a public television program. This is now a reality show, ladies and gentlemen. The program struck a nerve. Months after the broadcast, we're still getting calls from frustrated viewers looking for help.
I would like to talk to you concerning an issue that I'm having in the building that I'm living in.
My problem is I make $750 a month. I can't find one place that's even low income that allows me to move in.
As part of a 6-month reporting project, KCPT's digital magazine Flatland has been tracking some of our city's most tricky housing issues, from gentrification to the fight over apartments to the pricing out of downtown workers. And we've taken you from the courtroom to the streets in a raw new documentary on eviction from KCPT filmmaker Michael Price.
My husband and I aren't heartless. We don't want to put kids out on the street.
I'm the landlord.
What's your still building person?
It's no gas.
Right now, I'm not in a position to move.
I'm stuck between choosing whether or not to be shot at.
A real eviction notice.
They had their chance to come and pay their rent.
Which means I will not have the funds to run the programs that are so desperately needed.
I fear tomorrow that me and my children will
evicted for eviction.
Now it's time to go beyond the talk and push for answers. What happens when you bring together developers, political leaders, a landlord attorney, and housing advocates and challenge them to come up with a solution in front of a skeptical audience? Well, we're about to find out.
Support for this program is provided by the Healthcare Foundation of Greater Kansas City, the law firm of Hush Blackwell. Additional support comes from Dave and Jamie Cummings, Smithfield Foods, Haas and Wilkerson Insurance, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Now I get to do my ritual introduction of Nick Haynes. He's our leading on-air personality with the emphasis on personality. Ladies and gentlemen, the great Nick Haynes.
Are we ready to solve the affordable housing issue? We were in this very room back in January. Many of you were here with us. It was a packed room then, and we were amazed at how many people were concerned about this issue of affordable housing. Not a day goes by, we don't get a call at KCPT, and I take those calls from people absolutely in desperate situations, don't know where to turn, it's too complicated. This is not about talk today. We're on a search for solutions. Other communities have gone about making changes to improve affordable housing. Can we do the same thing here? That's what this hour is all about. Joining us is Quinton Lucas, one of the 13 members of the Kansas City, Missouri City Council. He's also even more valuable to us this hour since he's the chair of the City Council's Housing Committee. Bob Wise represents landlords and rental property owners in legal disputes. The Kansas City-based attorney speaks around the country on landlord-tenant law, debt collections, and fair housing. Kelly Raby is owner of Prairie Fire Development. He has over 25 years of experience in real estate development and construction. He just abandoned an affordable housing development in downtown Kansas City because he said it was simply too hard to make it work here. Kukethia Hill is Director of Community and Family Engagement at SchoolSpot KC. Its goal to close the achievement gap in Kansas City public schools, and housing insecurity has been identified as a pivotal issue in holding back the academic performance of our students. And Evie Craig is the head of Restart, which provides housing and support services to the homeless. She's also a lead partner in the Kansas City Eviction Project, a collaboration of researchers, neighborhood leaders, lawyers, and policymakers working to improve housing policy. Please welcome our panel, ladies and gentlemen. We still think of ourselves, by the way, as a very affordable community. We just did a whole documentary on KCPT all about eviction. It's easy just to talk about something. Sometimes it's better to see it. Here's a short excerpt from that documentary, Eviction.
We are heading to Jackson County Courthouse. That's in downtown Kansas City. We're going to see dozens and dozens of tenants on those dockets facing eviction this morning.
As an attorney, Gina Chiala has decided to fight for the most vulnerable in society.
Housing is one of the things that defines the character of your city. Is housing affordable, safe, sanitary?
These questions are answered every Thursday on the 7th floor of the Jackson County Courthouse. Here, eviction cases are heard.
These are 2 more courtrooms here where additional people are going to be facing eviction this morning. So 4 dockets altogether.
For Gina and her team, it's frantic work trying to help tenants avoid eviction.
I'm here at court right now for my landlord. He served me papers.
And they're going to evict me, or at least they're threatening to evict me. My car broke down and I needed a car to get to work. So I went and got a car payment and was late on my rent.
Landlords have to be paid rent, but tenants have rights too.
I'm here today to fight for my rights. There's mold in the home. We're living in black mold. That's wrong. That's wrong.
But in the experience of Gina and her team, many tenants are tripped up by the system.
They don't know the information about the court process. They don't know what to file. They don't know when to file it.
Gina comes across a tenant sitting distraught.
So she came to court dutifully, came to court early, and as happens sometimes because court is confusing, she sat in the wrong courtroom.
While her case was heard in a different courtroom. When she realized her mistake, she dashed over and caught the landlord outside. But he doesn't want to speak with her.
And the court informed her that after 10 days, the sheriff would come in and remove her and her 3 children from her home.
I don't know. I'm hoping that I can stop that judgment and obtain a lawyer so I can get more time to move.
1987 was when I bought my first rental property.
Stephen Summers owns around 50 rental properties across Kansas City.
We are off to knock on the door of one of our tenants that we are getting ready to file an eviction on. We try to educate our tenants. If the rent is late, there are late fees that have to be paid. If they're going to be late, to call me, to let me know. Because if I don't hear from them, I don't know what's going on.
This tenant in northeast Kansas City owes Stephen around $3,000, which includes 3 months' rent. Stephen thought they'd agree to a payment schedule, but nothing has been paid so far, and he can't reach her by phone.
If there's no penalty for not paying, it's just human nature. Why would you pay? Well, I'm the landlord. Guys came by.
An eviction can cost Stephen.
An empty house is a money hole, and it will suck the money right out of my bank account fast. We don't want empty houses. Your mom needs to give me a call right away.
Stephen cancels the eviction for this tenant after she starts to follow the payment schedule. But on a later date, 2 miles to the south, following a court order, there's a different outcome.
We have to set the personal items out on the street curb as we are changing the locks, and they won't be allowed back on the property.
The tenants aren't here. Stephen thinks they're at work and the kids at school.
Some of the bigger furniture and some of the electronics are going to stay in the house. The tenant wants them, they can call me at the office.
The monthly rent was $500 and they haven't paid the last 4 months. Stephen's team bag up all the personal items and it's left on the curb.
Some people watching this may think Steve's a bit heartless, isn't he? I mean, this is someone's home.
I would say we followed the law. They had their chance to come and pay their rent. They refused to. Unfortunately, they're paying the price today.
An excerpt from KCPT's documentary on eviction, setting the scene for what is happening in our community. But we're told all the time, aren't we? We're one of the most inexpensive cities in America. If you know anybody who's moved here from somewhere else, they can't believe how inexpensive the property is. So do we accept the notion, first of all, panel, that we do have an affordable housing problem in this community, Quinton Lucas?
We certainly do. And it's not just for lower income folks, even working class, moderate income. We're having real issues. In Kansas City proper today, if you're looking for good quality housing, it's not available in a lot of neighborhoods. And so it certainly is a problem, and it's one we're seeing in every part of the city, not just the inner city, north and south.
And what do you see, Evie Craig, over at Restart?
You know, you don't just live in a property that you rent or own. You have to pay utilities. And I think whenever I see the video, you know, who cannot be moved, and my staff and I are so moved by the individual cases, but I think the scale has to remain in front of us for us to feel the urgency. So roughly 9,000 eviction cases are filed in Jackson County every year. If 9,000 people had measles in Jackson County, we would declare an epidemic, stop everything else, and marshal all of our resources to resolve it. And it is as contagious. It's as contagious as measles.
Bob Wise, you travel all around the country. I mean, are we an affordable community?
If you ask anyone in Seattle, on the West Coast, in the Northeast, they would think this is heaven. And it's not a slight disparity. There are people on the coasts are renting one-bedroom apartments for more money than you can buy a 4-bedroom house in Kansas City. The difference in housing costs is unbelievable. I heard that the city council recently decided that an affordable one-bedroom unit is $1,000 a month. Most of my clients are charging much less than that. And a friend of mine who moved to Seattle got a one-bedroom for $2,000 a month, which doesn't include the $350 a month to park her car. Also, I'd like to point out that about the myth of the eviction epidemic. If the courthouse records are available to the public, in the last 10 years, the number of eviction cases filed has gone down 16%.
Kelly Raby, you travel all around the country. Are we making too much of a deal that we have an affordable housing problem in this community?
You know, the term affordable, low income, and we deal with this in a lot of communities we're in, it's a relative term, right? So I think we have to really understand the statistics facing our nation. And about, 3 or 4 days ago, the Joint Center on Housing Studies at Harvard came out with their 30-year annual State of the Housing Needs Report in our nation. And let me read you a few statistics that kind of lays this out. For every 100 households needing affordable housing in our country, there's only 35 units available. Rental property prices that are all-time high. What I'm seeing in Kansas City right now, we're an affordable housing developer. When I see units coming on in Kansas City, rent for $2,000, $3,000, up to $7,000 a month, it's ridiculous.
Cokeithia Hill, 40% of students in the Kansas City, Missouri school district don't remain enrolled in the same school for the entirety of an academic year. What role does housing play in that statistic?
We know that housing mobility causes challenges around attendance, causes challenges around achievement, causes challenges around the social and emotional well-being of children. And when we see reports from the Kansas City Eviction Project that when kids have 2, 3, 4 moves that they're scoring lower on their MAP assessments, we have to say that schools are more than just buildings where kids go. They represent a structural part of the viability and thriving ability of a community.
This is all about solutions and fixes, and we're going to lay out for you a variety of options based on what is happening in other communities and how they are dealing with this issue and what we could conceivably do in this community. Let's look at option number 1. Why don't we just build, if it's a problem, build more affordable homes? It sounds simple, right? Why not? You've tried actually to build an affordable housing development, quit on that job in the last 12 months.
The project we're talking about is really more related to the governor, and when he eliminated the state low-income housing tax credit, it reduced a big part of the financing structure that we use to build our projects. Right now in this economy, interest rates have gone up 2 points in the last 24 months, so the cost of money is more expensive right now. Construction costs continue to go up. Tariffs are starting to impact. Today I read one of the nation's largest nail manufacturers is about ready to go out of business. So there's pressures on construction costs.
Those costs true for all types of housing? And you look around the entire metropolitan area and you see lots of housing going up. They have much more higher price tags associated with them, but they're still being built. Why aren't they being built at that lower income level?
Do you want my honest opinion?
Yes, of course we do. Isn't that why we came, ladies and gentlemen?
Or should I? The higher end market that's being built right now, they're being driven by the financial markets. Like the problem we had when the housing crisis happened, you have sacks of money coming into our country from other foreign nations. They don't care about yield on their money. They're protecting their currency value. You have investors on Wall Street putting money into these projects. They're not, in my opinion, concerned with the long-term viability and sustainability of these projects. They're more concerned about making a 3 or 4% return on their money. When more projects are coming online that are renting at $1,500, $1,800, $2,000, $7,000 a month, that is just not long-term sustainable, in my opinion.
Other cities across America face the same conditions, those same financial conditions, and yet they are building affordable homes. Denver just approved the city's first affordable housing fund. Development fees and a property tax increase generate $150 million, and city officials say they plan to subsidize the building of 6,000 low-income housing units. Why not here, Quentin Lucas?
I don't think there's any reason we should not do that here. I mean, I think, frankly, that's necessary. So I think at the same time we're thinking about a 3/8 cent sales tax for early childhood education, the same time we're thinking about public infrastructure increases, because everybody wants to talk about the roads. We need to really think about how housing can be a part of that. And just to Bob's point from a second ago, the only reason council actually passed something that defined affordable housing was because we had no definition before. So you had developers that were building projects with $2,000 a month rents that were saying, hey, we fit the city's description of what affordable is. That was a problem, and that's something we continue to need to fight. To Kelly's point, we're building a lot of supply. And if the public's going to subsidize all of this supply, I don't think it should be for the $1,800 a month apartments. And so it's a mixed kind of conversation.
I bring up an example from Denver. You can look much closer to home. Lawrence, Kansas. Voters just voted to dig deeper into their pocketbooks for a new tax for affordable housing. It brings in $10 million a year. Let's take a quick look.
But 40 miles to the west of Kansas City, the city of Lawrence has decided to act.
You know, everybody has to pay more for housing across the board, but some people have to give up luxuries, other people have to give up necessities.
Since mid-2015, the city of Lawrence has had an affordable housing advisory board. It's chaired by Pastor Matthew Studvant.
If you give money, we can give food, meet some of those immediate needs, but we also have to fix systems that have created the need in the first place.
The politicians, including the mayor, have got on board.
So the city staff heard what we were saying and recommended that we identify an increment of a sales tax to be put on the ballot to let the citizens decide whether or not this was a goal for the community.
In the fall of 2017, Lawrence voters said yes to the sales tax, and the advisory board will shepherd $1 million more a year to incentivize the development of affordable housing.
Before too long, in the next few months actually, we'll be receiving the results of a study that will help us understand what do we need to build most, what do we need to build first.
This is a significant tool, but it's not the solution. We have to try many different things to address this spectrum of need. It's a regional problem, it's also a national problem.
Is the problem being tackled in the Kansas City area? It has around 60,000 low-income households in need of affordable rental housing. Last year, the number of units built for them was around 60, whereas the number of more expensive units built was around 4,000.
So Lawrence, they dug deep into their own pockets to actually help with affordable housing. We have sales taxes in this community now that are in some parts of the city in excess of 10%. So there's certain priorities that are being funded. Why not a affordable housing tax in Kansas City, Evie?
An affordable housing tax is one option. There are options such as in LA County, the flexible supportive housing pool, which brings together the county health department and the Conrad Hilton Foundation. In New York City, there's a right to counsel, which at least gives people the opportunity to understand the process and to speak and meet across the table. We have to find a place to come together, and it has to come together with leadership and the will to make a change.
We actually have in our audience several members of the Kansas City, Missouri City Council, some of them running for mayor, including the current councilman, who is our city housing committee chair, also running for mayor of Kansas City.
Sure.
Why not a tax for affordable housing?
I actually would support such a thing. Maybe I'm one of the few, but I think it would be supported. But I say there's more than that, right? It's both identifying the problems and knowing where we can tackle the resources. A missed opportunity we had, and I mean this with respect, was we funded $10 million for home demolition. I said at the time, demolishing is not a housing policy. But, right, it was something that was attractive to a lot of people because they wanted the raggedy house down the street torn down. We get sources of funding, and too often Kansas City's answer, and I mean this with respect to everybody I work with, is to say, let's take the $7 or $8 million we get from HUD, pass it out, and then say we've done it for the year.
Bob Wise, a tax for affordable housing?
Well, you're putting a tax on real estate, which is the product you're trying to lower the price of. I think it's interesting that if you look at any other type of product, automobiles, clothing, food, you name it, there are a line of products that serve all income levels. You can buy a Ferrari, you can buy a Volkswagen. Clothing, same way. Food, you can eat at a 5-star restaurant, you can go get fast food. So there's a market that is served for people who don't have a lot of money. Why don't we, if we don't have that in housing, we have to ask why. What are we doing that is preventing people from being able to make a profit from low-income housing the same way they do from low-income cars or food or anything else?
Well, I think the option's available in Kansas City. I just don't think cutting and pasting the same thing you did every year for the past 30 years ain't going to cut it in this new economy we're in. I mean, the demographics, 50% of the U.S. population in the next 10 years is going to be represented by people over 65 and millennials. Immigrants are representing 33% of all new housing formation in our country. The consumption of housing is changing, and just to cut and paste and do the same thing every year isn't going to cut it. 75% of all new household formation in our country projected right now is non-traditional. Immigrants, single families, single parents, yet home builders were building 75% of their product for sale homes in the suburbs. And that demand and supply just doesn't match up.
What we've seen happen is cities are actually requiring developers, just like yourself, to have a certain percentage of all of their new development and make low-income housing available in those developments. In Boulder, Colorado, it's 20%. In Park City, Utah, it's 20%. Santa Fe, New Mexico, you want to build a new development, 20% needs to be low income. Didn't they just try that in Kansas City? And what happened to that, Quinton Lucas?
So we passed it. I mean, we passed it. It's not, I think, as aggressive as we'd like, but it's 10% in incentivized projects. In terms of why...
So anytime a developer gets an incentive, any subsidy from Kansas City, Missouri taxpayers, they have to set aside 10% of those units for low income.
The answer to that is yes. The devil's in the details, right? That is it grandfathered in? Was it a project that was before? Is it built in some other area? But let me be kind of honest in the answer of why is this happening in other cities like Lawrence, Kansas, or Austin and Denver, and not Kansas City? There are two trends to it, I think. One of which is, and I say this as somebody who rents myself, and by the way, there are people that don't like to vote for people who rent. There is a long-standing bias against renters.
Yeah, that's right.
Cities don't want renters sometimes. Neighborhoods don't like renters, and I hear it all the time. I represent the east side of town, and a lot of my voters will often say, we don't want more rental houses up and down this street. So it's already an area where you're saying, we may not actually favor that in city policy. The second point is a classic kind of demand issue. There's a different type of demand that sits in Lawrence, Kansas, or Austin, Texas, right? There's some uniqueness to the market. Every time I've tried to change incentive policy or housing policy in this city, and we've been successful sometimes, people have said, Quinton, you are going to destroy this city's market, right? We're going to destroy housing construction and all of that. So the real conversation I think we all have to have with our friends and neighbors is, one, say renters aren't bad people. Two, we need to make sure we're saying, no, this is what we're going to demand in Kansas City. We're going to demand that we actually have a good quality, affordable housing stock and not just scared off. One other point, I'll stop talking, y'all, in 1 second, is this. When we talk about percentage set-asides, and I think that's important, That is a small part of the answer. Because how are you going to fit a family with 3 kids and a mother and a father, perhaps, or one parent in one of these tiny 1-light, 2-light condo rooms? And so the real answer is, how do we help support housing through like a trust fund so that you're helping people stay in larger rental units in other parts of the city? And it's not just we're going to incentivize downtown and plaza construction and give little piecemeal parts to it.
One other area in terms of a solution is, rather than, if you're not building new units, is to improve the existing housing that we have in Kansas City. And voters, by the way, are getting a chance to weigh in on this. On August 7th, voters in Kansas City will be asked to decide what is being called the Healthy Homes Initiative that would impose new regulations on unsafe rental housing. Currently, the city doesn't inspect rental properties. Housing advocates claim nearly 24,000 Kansas Cityans live in homes that fail to meet minimum health standards. Here's a snapshot of what's at stake.
So the first thing to check is that big button right there.
Are rental inspections good for a city? In Missouri, the city of Independence has decided that they are.
We have wonderful landlords living in our city, but you always have to be looking out for those who abuse the system.
Today, this rental property is being inspected, and the mayor of Independence has been invited along.
After many years of discussion, we were finally able to implement a program.
The landlords every 2 years have to do an inspection.
The inspections came into effect in 2017. Unlike in Kansas, it's an ongoing requirement for landlords. They pay $50 per unit and choose from a list of inspectors, which includes Mike.
Then we set a time and go out and do the 9 items on the inspection.
Although the program was billed as a public health measure, Mike is not required to inspect for black mold or pests. Not that he found any here.
If I see those things, I mention it to the landlord, but that is not something on our list.
Why build in such a big loophole?
Well, this was developed after many conversations with landlords. There was significant pushback from landlords on a number of these issues, but it is something that as we continue to develop this program that we need to start looking at.
The inspections have made hundreds of rental properties safer, and it's led to hundreds of landlords registering with the city. To the west, in Kansas City, Missouri, campaigners have taken encouragement.
Landlords are in the public business. They rent to the public. That they say, well, this is a private business. You can't tell me what to do.
The campaigners have collected signatures to put a rental inspection ordinance on the ballot. It would be wider than Independence's and should cover black mold and pest infestations.
We should insist on safe housing that's also affordable, and we can do both, and we should.
Some landlords, however, oppose the idea of rental inspectors.
To justify their job, they're going to have to find things wrong. The good landlords have to pay more money, which has to be passed on to their tenants. The landlords who do not register their properties, they can rent their houses cheaper than we can.
The battle lines have been drawn. Mayor Pro Tem Scott Wagner is with the petitioners.
But what we're trying to do is to create a system that we can assure that everybody not only can live in a good house, but if they call the city, don't have the threat of eviction hanging over them. And that's really what we're talking about here.
They'll take the petition up to the city clerk's office. And on Tuesday, August the 7th, Kansas City voters will decide whether to pass the measure.
By the way, Mayor Pro Tem Scott Wagner in the back of the room, thank you for being here during this hour. Evie Craig, how will this really help the people that you deal with, for instance? Does this really improve conditions for them?
Yes, I think it has the potential to do that. When my husband and I are inconvenienced for maybe a night when our power is out and we can't take a hot shower, that's really an inconvenience. I work with people who, for months, are taking themselves and their children back to relatives' homes, friends' homes, for hot baths, to do the dishes. So we know that really establishes a standard of living that's very, very dangerous for our young people. And we know that's going to have long-lasting repercussions on the community. So that really is critical. I would also go back to the issue around the inefficient homes. We have individuals whose utility bills are higher than McMansions in Johnson County. You cannot get out of that hole. And I would like to have things that support landlords. There aren't funds to help landlords who are trying to make those buildings more habitable and efficient. Those kinds of solutions would really, I think, work well for everyone. I just want to say, when you're giving someone their home, when you're building a home for them, renting a home for them, buying a home from them, it's not like a car. You can live without your car, but you can't live without a home.
Bob Wise, if voters say yes to this on August 7th, we want this program, what would be the trade-offs and consequences, in your view, of that decision?
Well, like the idea of raising property taxes, it'll be another thing that slightly raises the cost of housing.
You think landlords will just increase the cost of their units?
That's what happens to all taxes. It's always passed on to the customer. But also, you're going to have, like a lot of the laws like this, the bad guys are probably not going to comply. Let's say you find X thousand units that are substandard and you say nobody should have to live in this kind of unit, and you close it down. Where are those people going? If they're already so disadvantaged that they're living in substandard housing and you close that down, you better think about where you're going to put them, because the only difference there is, instead of being evicted for not paying rent by somebody like me, they're going to be evicted by the city because they're going to be moved out of the housing. So you need a plan to deal with that.
Does that give you pause for concern, Councilman Lucas?
No. Mayor Pro Tem Wagner actually had more drafting credit, so I'll see if I get it right here. But the ordinance has actually got a solution for that, which is there's supposed to be funding that's going to permit them to address the concerns that are in the homes. Nobody's goal in this effort is actually to try to kick a bunch of people out of their houses and then create this new kind of problem class. Instead, there's supposed to be enough funding, hence why we have a funding mechanism for it, to help do the repair that's going to be necessary in connection with it. And what's more, to provide extra funds to different housing-related initiatives. So this is a pro-housing type of thing, in essence, in connection with how we're saying we need resources. This is one responsible way to build those resources in the community. And indeed, they've had long conversations about those kind of negative effects, and I think many of those have been addressed in this ordinance.
We're going to be taking your questions. If you have questions, you can come to the microphone. If you've been texting questions or on our Facebook Live feed tonight, we're getting a lot of those questions in. Laura wants to know, how many people, by the way, present tonight, by a show of hands, can afford the city's $1,000 per month affordable housing threshold? Okay. All righty. That's what she wanted to know. Mike wants to know, how do low-income housing credits work? Kelly, you mentioned that.
Yes.
Why are they so critical to financing affordable housing?
The tax credits are really this. The federal government gives every state an allocation of tax credits. It's about 80 to 90% of every project you do. Columbus Park's a perfect example. It was a $17 million project. The state of Missouri raised about $14 million in federal tax credits that we sold to the private market and was able to reduce our debt structure so we could rent our units out at an affordable level.
Coming up, we take your questions, but first a question for you at home. How do you feel when someone that doesn't look like you moves into your neighborhood? Does a person's race matter to you? What about their income? Last year, Kansas City announced plans to build a new mixed-use development in the Northland with room for low-income families. So what was the response?
27 people are going to be the downfall of Northland society. Your hair's on fire because of that?
Seeing some of the vitriol that was sort of being thrown out there online, especially if you go to the page where the petition was. I had sort of a visceral reaction to it too, when you see it and you say, wow, that's really pretty bad.
As a product of the Northland, that petition and that whole social media thread really made me almost ashamed to say that, yeah, I was a Park Hill kid, or I came from Platte County.
You know, our company's built about 24,000 units.
And even though we build mixed income, like Villa del Sol, I'm always surprised when I go into a neighborhood saying, I'm not here just to build affordable housing. I'm here to also attract market rate. That people are so skeptical, they don't about any, if you say, I'm building one affordable unit, the neighborhood will go bananas. Even though they're in the same income, they have the same income level as the person who we would be renting to. It's the idea, and it's the negative connotation that goes with affordable housing that people just freak out.
Changing the language. Longtime housing crusaders say the best way to get creative solutions is to stop saying affordable housing. Describing a project as affordable homes gets a more positive response, apparently. We're told people live in homes, not housing. Very few people at the end of the day say, boy, I can't wait to get to my housing. Other terms that work better are apartments or starter home. Developers and planners should avoid using technical terms like rental unit that evoke negative images. Is the language around this issue a barrier to progress, Kokithia?
Yeah, I think that it very well can be. I think that we also have to look at, when we look at research and look at the role that race and equity and inclusion, and we look at, like, what does it mean? When I can go back to, I had a master's degree in 2004. I worked in the school district as a guidance counselor, and I made $29,000. So when people put in their image of low income or affordable housing, they are not thinking of a master's degree full-time professional. And so I think that we just need to be careful with language. We need to unpack language, and we just need to have discussions about that.
Absolutely. When Bob mentioned, there are different types of restaurants, we don't say if you go to Wendy's or McDonald's, we're going to the low-income restaurant. We just go into
that's an affordable burger.
Okay, so, is language important in this, Kelly?
It is.
Are you going to start changing the language?
Relative.
No more units?
No, the unit, that's just more of a term that we use when we're putting our financing together, but I think the affordable and low income, and I just had this discussion in Nebraska with a community we're working with today, because people are coming up, well, we don't want low income housing here. Then you show them in their community that the majority of the workers there are earning $12 to $15 an hour, and they qualify. It's workforce housing. It's getting around what the last 30 years of what affordable meant, just like she was saying. It's like she's hard work. She's paying taxes. She's working 2 or 3 jobs, one job, and she can't afford $1,000 a month. You have to redefine what that word means.
In San Francisco, for the purpose of low-income housing, a family of 4 with an income of $100,000 is considered low income in San Francisco.
Nick,
Madam, we're ready for your question.
Can I just be a contrarian real quickly?
Oh, we love that. Okay.
Because, I haven't lived that long, but we've had different words for low-income housing. We had the projects. We have affordable housing, we have low income, we have all that. Kokithia hit a point, and it was the important one. This is about largely race, living around low income people, who's gonna be around you. We can change the name to quality housing tomorrow, but as soon as all the quality housing starts to look kind of like something that's, different, then I think that's still gonna be an issue. So that's just...
Fair enough. You've been very patient, madam. We're ready for your question.
Thank you. A lot of times these services that are available is based on your income level, and many of the people that are right above that bar do not get help. You talked about a incentive or a trust fund, a slush fund as an incentive for renters that pay early, maybe if they miss their rent once a month or once a year, to be able to tap into that slush fund that is provided.
Who pays for that? Is that the city who's doing the slush fund?
Whoever can put together funds for this, need for people that might have a medical emergency or a car emergency, then that would help the landlord as well as the tenant.
Okay, well, what about that? Thank you very much, madam. Can you take money from the trash collection, from law enforcement, or some other area to pay for that?
You could do that, although the one thing that I do want to make sure we think of is how does this bureaucracy work? And how is
well, don't we have it with utilities? Isn't there a fund for people who can't pay their electric or gas bill?
Barely, yes. It exists, but water bills in this city are very expensive. We have a fund allegedly that's supposed to help
So
y'all with.
that's not a good example then.
No, it exists. It doesn't cover fees.
Right.
The way the whole system works, folks who are already struggling to make it are punished even further. And I'm just going to say, and that is because traditionally they aren't heard and don't have a voice. That's something we need to look at.
We have a familiar face from our eviction program in January, Tara Ragavir. Good to see you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks. I'm Tara. I'm the founder and director of the Kansas City Eviction Project. One of the panelists shared the assertion that evictions are actually down in the last 16 years. I want to debunk that myth. That's patently false. I have access to 189,000 eviction records from Jackson County courts. I got it straight from the county clerk. I've been analyzing that data for over 6 years, and I've just today published a fact sheet on the 2017 data that shows that in 2017, there was a 2% increase in evictions over 2016, and the rent and possession evictions are at an over 20-year high. Those are the evictions that are a result of non-payment of rent. So my question for the panelists is about scale. The mayor of Minneapolis just committed $50 million to housing and said that he's going to stake his political career on the issue. Can you talk to me about the scale that we need in Kansas City?
I want to give Bob, first of all, Bob an opportunity for rebuttal on those statistics.
These are public records. They are on the website of the Jackson County Courthouse. Ms. Rugavir says the evictions went up in 2017 by about 2%. Yes, it was 1.8. She picks that year because it's the first year since 2011 since they've gone up. The high was 2008. There were 11,050 eviction cases filed. We have not hit that number since then. 2017 up slightly to 9,292, which is still less than 11,050 10 years ago. Down, yes. I don't know what crashing a plane into a building has to do with evictions. It's a lot of people. But what I'm saying is I'm defending my statement, which evictions are down over the last 10 years. It's right here.
Okay, all right. Let's continue with the other point that Tara made, which was about the commitment in a bigger scale to fixing the problem. She mentions the mayor of Minneapolis, who has stated his political reputation on increasing the amount of money going towards affordable housing. We did talk about a tax. We haven't been talking big enough on this program, and how do you actually tackle that?
Well, I could just tell you with Columbus Park that we developed, again, as a half income restricted, half market rate. We have been full since we've opened. We have a waiting list a mile long. The last affordable housing project built within the loop outside of ours was 2007. Count the units of luxury housing that's been built in the loop and incentivized. How many affordable
So
housing?
how do we change the incentives then to make it a far more powerful proposition for any type of developer to say, hey, it's better to actually get involved in the affordable housing market than it is for building luxury units?
The idea, briefly, on incentives is, yeah, you need to try to actually drive development in the ways that you're seeing. I think in the late 1990s, the Kansas City approach, and through the 2000s, was we just want to see development downtown. Let's make downtown better. Let's make these other areas better. We're trying to remediate blight. To the fundamental point now, we need to say, okay, if we've addressed the blight remediation, if we got rid of the wig store on Grand that used to be there and all that stuff.
This lady likes the wig store. Okay.
No, but to the point, but you made another point, which is who's going to make this their key mantle? I think the challenge for every one of us who's in elected office is how do we make this issue as sexy as building an airport, right? Because people come up to me and say, when's the airport going to be done? And I get people yelling at me and all of that. And it's odd. Nobody's saying that about housing unless we're actually trying to get low income or quality or units or whatever in a neighborhood that doesn't want it. So I think what you need to have is people, when we say stake their careers, stake their careers. Get into that fight when you go to this neighborhood meeting and say, I know that y'all probably want like some wealthy owners and a bunch of lawyers to move in and all of that, but we think it's important that you have true mixed income because it's not that threatening to you.
And yes, I'm sorry.
You go right.
And yes, it takes me back to like my community organizing, mobilizing days, because I look at how many people showed up tonight, and I think about how many times the school district has asked the city council, most recently 3 Light, not to give another TIF project that diverts fundamental money away from education. And so as long as affordable housing is a low-income Black and brown issue, unless we start thinking about, we want this entire city to be work, live, and play. I want my son to play with white kids, Asian kids, Black kids, Latino kids. Like, I benefit from that. And so we've got to start shifting this narrative around, like, what do we really mean when we say Kansas City to be a place where people work, live, play, and stay? Like, I get the development. I understand that. I was a former person on the council. I get the 5%, sales tax. I get the 1% earning tax and how we create the budget. But we have to think about, like, the human rights of people that are here. And human capital, I think, is an infrastructure. So when we start thinking about infrastructure bonds for roads and bridges, how do we think about that in terms of people?
More of your questions straight ahead, but should we be thinking of people like we do roads, sidewalks, and bridges? We head across the state line now to Wyandotte County, where in one housing complex, dozens of residents are living in hair-raising conditions.
The block is called Central Park Towers, and it's in Kansas City, Kansas. Many of its tenants qualify for rental assistance from the US Department of Housing, or HUD. This evening, some of them are meeting their lawyer, Bryce Bell.
And we had heard some stories about the issues that some of the tenants were facing, such as bed bugs, rodents, mice, and cockroaches.
One tenant decided she'd had enough.
You're told when you're growing up, sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite. Well, I thought it was a myth or a, old wives' tale, but it wasn't. They exist.
In 2014, a year after she'd moved in, Terry's nights became the stuff of nightmares.
You'd feel things walking across your face, crawling up your back. They bite, and they would itch so bad. Oh, these are scars from bed bugs. All the little spots.
Terry tried to get rid of them, and she notified the block's managers, the Wyandotte County Unified Government, and the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation. But the infestation continued. Desperate, she thought she'd call an attorney.
It's outside of my typical practice area.
I was looking in Google, pulled up attorneys. I'd seen him, and I'm like, no, and I seen him again, and I'm like, okay. On a prayer, said, I hope they take this, and they did.
Bryce took on Terry's case and those of about 70 other tenants who had similar complaints.
I think somebody has to speak out, and somebody has to do the right thing. If that's our law firm, then so be it.
This evening's meeting is for Bryce to update his clients on how the case is progressing. But he's had a tip-off about a tenant upstairs who's not been able to attend. The elderly gentleman living in this apartment is struggling to look after himself. He has an infestation of bed bugs.
Oscar, yeah, right there. Oh my God. Yeah. That is terrible. Oh my God. All over here. Oh my God. It's almost impossible to put it into words that a human being in America goes to bed in a bed like that every night.
Matt, are we ready for you?
I appreciate the brilliant people who are participating in this. Something you said, the will to solve the problem. Shame needs to be moved away from the man that's laying homeless on the ground to the city that allows it. Shame away from the poor to the city that wants to run away from it, doesn't want to look at it, not in my backyard. Let's run off to the suburbs. Let's pretend it doesn't affect us.
Thank you very much. You mentioned the suburbs. We've got a question here from somebody saying, why is this only Kansas City, Missouri's problem?
This crosses suburbs, urban, rural, every demographic across our country. This is an issue coast to coast. It is not just resident to us. And other cities, believe it or not, have a lot worse, have a lot worse problems than we do. This is an issue that permeates every person you know. I mean, it is a coast-to-coast issue, and it needs to be dealt with. And the cities that get ahead of this, even like Northwest Arkansas, their economic development organization did a big study and said, we have an affordable housing issue. We got to get ahead of this. We got to be ahead of this curve. Let's address this now. Let's be proactive. Let's put some things in place and address this now, not what we used to do. Because for us to be successful, you have to have a diverse economy, diverse employers, diverse occupations, diverse incomes, and you need that diverse housing to support those folks. And the communities that are getting ahead of that and addressing that are going to be the ones that are going to be successful.
We're ready for your question, madam. Thank you.
Hi, I am a property manager, and I've been in property management for 2 years in Kansas City. And last Thursday, I went to my VP and with concerns about overcharging for late charges and slapping evictions on far too quickly. I was fired on Friday. So my question is there an oversight committee that is penalizing, that is watching and regulating these landlords, especially the ones that are coming from out of town, and where can I apply?
There is a dearth of regulation. I mean, the way that we usually do it now, we, the city and states and all of that, is that this is all basically based on state property and landlord-tenant law, which gives significant protection to the property owner and that sort of thing. Part of the Healthy Homes Ordinance, the petition we were talking about, is to help create more of that regulatory apparatus that can look into these sorts of issues so that there is some sort of answer and so that we're saying that the jurisdiction does care. One other very brief point, Nick, though, is you hit a nail on the head, which is that so many of these properties are owned by LLCs, many of which are out of state, some of which are out of this country, right, that are using these as pure investments. These, in many of the situations, I know there are landlords in the room, and God bless some of you because you live in Kansas City, you keep up property in Kansas City. A whole heck of a lot of them are people that are just speculating and trying to, in fact, just plant in this market, not trying to do the right thing.
Well,
And
what
so-
about let's find her a job?
Well,
I'll give her my phone number.
Okay.
I mean, you just hit the nail on the head. 99.7 of the cases that landlords brought in Jackson County Housing Court went in their favor. We know that's skewed. So something like what they have in New York City, where there is a right to counsel, where at least there can be some equity of those kinds of judgments, could really impact the future of folks who right now are finding themselves and their kids having to cross, not even knowing that they have to cross a hall to get to the right room for their hearing.
So
they're being denied basic
the
rights.
deck is stacked against tenants because of the people you
Yes.
represent, Bob Weiss, these landlords, right?
Well, the deck is stacked. If I'm in their favor, they certainly have an advantage there, right? But seriously, this area of the law is incredibly simple. It's not like arguing about whether a doctor did a heart transplant properly or something like that. The issue is, has the tenant paid the rent or not? And that's why the landlord generally wins, because if he shows that the rent isn't paid, he wins. The tenant can be represented by Lee Bailey and Alan Dershowitz, but if he hasn't paid the rent, he's going to be evicted.
You're not agreeing?
I would say if you had to pay your rent, even though you'd been threatened, even though your housing was substandard, if one of the reasons that you had to break your lease was because you were fleeing domestic violence or sexual assault, and your name is on that lease because you were exploited by that person, but that is still on your record as an eviction. So what I'm just saying is, I think for many of us, a huge area that has not been explored at all, and city leadership would help us in this now and going forward, is working with some of our state legislators in Jefferson City who, with the new governor and what may be coming, are trying to make some changes. And we are able to make changes in such slow increments that we're hoping to be able to get a bill at least heard in committee that would allow individuals fleeing domestic violence or sexual assault who have to break their leases to save their lives, who are able to not have an eviction on their record.
Councilman.
And we've not been able to do that.
And Nick, I will give to counter his point. It is very hard for somebody who, let's say, is 19-year-old, just getting by, trying to live and struggle every day, to go out-talk a lawyer. I was trained for a lot of money for years to try to out-talk said person. And so that's why we're saying make it fair. Give them a chance to have some level of representation so they can try to fight back, particularly where there's some merit to the cases.
Okay. Sir, we're ready for you.
A very specific question.
when the city decides to do these home inspections and we give these landlords monies to bring them up to code, are you going to require them to keep their rent at the same pace and not raise the rent after we pay to have their building rehab at least 4 to 6 years?
So I'm not gonna lie to you, brother. I don't know the answer to that. I doubt legally we can tell somebody they can't raise their rent for 6 years.
Even after we rehab their home?
What's
Even
that?
after we rehab their property?
So
our tax dollars are gonna rehab your property, and you're gonna 6 months later put them out and raise the rent, and that's okay?
You know, I can tell you this
Okay,
much
I
as-
got you.
from the
Thank
law.
you.
We can't.
I've got
do
two
that.
very quick questions from our text line I want to get to. Could we provide renter assistance to keep people in their homes and apartments they're struggling to afford now? In Columbus, Ohio, a portion of the local motel hotel tax, plus a small slice of the real estate transfer fee, is designated for helping people to help pay when they're struggling on their rent. Could we do that here?
Yes. Now, the question here is that we're already using the hotel motel tax to help fund things like
Spring Center.
Right. I mean, we're using them on all these other tourist issues and all that. So, yes is the answer that we could, but probably to the point I've heard a few times, including Evie's original point, which is how important is housing to you?
Yeah, and I would double that point. I've been in this city for 25 years, worked for the Economic Development Corporation when Cleaver was mayor, and I have seen people get behind an issue. If we can build $1 billion airport, a 1,000-room convention hotel, $2 billion plus in infrastructure improvements, and incentivize garages downtown for luxury housing, we can put a tax or something together to help build more affordable housing in this city.
Evie, Kelly, Quentin, Patricia, and Bob, thank you so much for being with us. Lots of questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to them. I told you 139 phone calls have come personally to my desk since we did our forum in January on eviction. This is a very complicated issue. People are very frustrated and they want answers. And I hope we provided at least some thought about the trade-offs and consequences of some of those solutions. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Support for this program is provided by the Healthcare Foundation of Greater Kansas City, the law firm of Hush Blackwell. Additional support comes from Dave and Jamie Cummings, Smithfield Foods, Haas and Wilkerson Insurance, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
I'm Nick Haynes. Thank you for watching Evicted here on KCPT. Every time we run something about this issue, we get lots of calls. We want you to know if you're behind on your rent or facing eviction, there is help available free of charge 24 hours a day. And the number couldn't be simpler, 211, or get help online at 211kc.org. We've been talking this week to our friends at United Way, and they insist this is what they're there for. So if you're in need, take them up on their offer to lend a helping hand.